Welcome to another episode of the Kite Pod with me, Roo Chater. In today's episode, I'm chatting with a good friend of mine, Lewis Crathern. Lewis is a kiteboarder from the UK, famous for jumping over a pier some time ago, which I'm sure, even if that was before your time, I think it was 2010 that he did it, you would have heard of and perhaps seen the video. Anyway, Lewis has been riding with Duotone for 10 years, so we talk a little bit about that. But the big news today is that he has changed his sponsor, and everyone has been trying to guess who he's switched to. He's been keeping it very, very much under wraps. But we are proud to be the first people to announce it on a podcast, and he has gone to Harlem. So we talk a lot about that and how the brand sits with him. It's a really good conversation. I like Lewis a lot. He's done really well for himself over the years, and now just turned 40. He's heading into a new career and actually looking at more the distribution and agency side of things and sales for this product and these kites into the UK, which I think is a really good move for him. And he's doing that alongside Aaron Hadlow. Anyway, we cover off all of that. Plus, we get into the meat and bones of social media, how it affects young riders, how it was perhaps a little bit different back in his day, how the sport's changed over the years, how the equipment's made it easier for people to get into, and lots of other interesting conversations around wind energy and sustainability as well. Shout out to our diamond sponsors, Cabrina, Ozone, Duotone, and Core. Make sure you give this a like and a share. And if you can give it a rating on the App Store, that's even better. Share it with your friends. You guys spreading the word is how we get these episodes out to everybody. It's a really good episode. I'm sure you're going to love it. So without any more chat from me, let's get straight into it. Enjoy. Hi there. Welcome to the Kite Pod with me, Roo Chater. Today, I've got some big news from the kite surfing world for you, and this is going to go out on the day that this is released. We're recording this a couple of days early to give me time to edit it, but I'm sat down with Lewis Crathern, who is one of the premier big air kiteboarders from the older days, I would say. He's more into the commentating side of things now, but I've known Lewis for a long time. We go way back to sort of the dawn of kiteboarding almost, I think, sort of 2004 we were hanging out, kite surfing in Whitstable and in Brighton and going to events in the UK and stuff like that. So I followed his career with great interest. You might know him as the man who touched the sky. He was the guy that jumped over Brighton Pier that time. If you've seen that video, it's probably the most viral video of kiteboarding before viral was even a thing in the world of the internet. But the big question, Lewis, is you've got a new top on and looks like you're no longer with Duotone. So what's the story?
And the story there is that after 10 years, wonderful years with Duotone, I have to say, I had a wonderful relationship with them. It was time for me to move on, and I was up for a new challenge, and everything just aligned up nicely. I mean, naturally, everybody, I think, has been looking at Harlem's journey to where it is now with King of the Air winners and kites that have got world records with height. You know, it's drawn our attention in. And a number of things lined up for me, which have fell into place. Obviously, Aaron being a close friend of mine, I've watched him grow over the last few years. I was close with Ralph as well at Duotone. I just felt it was a time for a change for me. And like I said, I can't thank Duotone enough. We left on very good terms. But it was just, 10 years is a quarter of my life. It's a long time to have had. But it's time for a change, and I look forward to telling you all about it, to be honest, and what it involves.
Excellent. So this has been sort of a fairly closely guarded secret, but I know you had a really good relationship with Duotone. Should we kick off with give me three of your best memories with Duotone before we get into the Harlem stuff, just to give those guys a nod because you were with them for so long.
Okay, I think straight off the bat, what a lot of people may have missed with Duotone was what happened right at the start of our relationship. So at King of the Air, I mean, most people know I had a big crash. It was a severe crash. I was in a induced coma, and that very much changed the standards of safety. I took one for the team. There's how I felt about that. There was no safety boat that got to me and all of that stuff, but they supported me so well through that. For a new rider, that's barely been on the books for less than a month, to have that level of unconditional support, that they would still support me, because that's the first thing you worry about as a sponsored athlete. How long am I going to be out? Are these people going to support me? So straight from the ground running, they supported me incredibly in that way. Obviously, as far as my competition highlights, I managed to stand on the podium at the Red Bull King of the Air. That was, that was 2 years later. It was lovely to have achieved that moment and done that with them. And I think the other thing that I always think about is just how strong my relationship was with not only international, but with Emma in the UK, who was our distributor in the UK. We did so much. I felt like I really achieved my potential in the UK. We had a really good program for working with young athletes, the Young Blood program, which has been going on a long time. I'm really happy with what we achieved in the UK. Coaching clinics, demos. So there's just a few highlights to name some, but generally just the overwhelming support I had. I was encouraged to um, be myself and to get on with it. I think I was trusted to get on with it. I was one of the older riders in the team, and I just felt like they just let me get on with it, and that was something I'll always appreciate.
It was certainly like a good stint. You know, a lot of riders shop around and change brands and stuff like that. I think spending 10 years with a brand is quite, a dedicated amount of time to put into them, especially with a brand that had such a large roster of riders as well, right? There was quite a big team on that sort of team sheet when you looked at it on the website.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I finally left the WhatsApp group after 10 years, my message was simply that I was so privileged. I felt so privileged, to sit alongside riders like over time, Aaron, Ayrton, Matthew, Gisela Polido's a name on there as one of the ambassadors. Just so many riders and world champions. I would forever look at that team thing and be like, how am I on this, for 10 years? And I think they really saw what I brought to the table. And there's lots of riders there equally that aren't just competition, the best riders in the world. They're important too, but I think, could see the value in having a rider that had different projects and different things other to the norm. And, like the sustainability range they made, Concept Blue was great for me for the time I was there. So, no, it was just a different thing, and we'll get into how it is with Harlem now with a smaller team. But that big team, you could only feel inspired by lots of the other riders. Tom Court, especially being one as well that's been on the team. You talk about 10 years being long. I mean, he must be into 2 decades at least. Like learning and working with him eventually gave me a lot of respect for the dedication and just had loyalty that someone like him could give to the brand. So I had good people around me. It helped me develop further.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, like, looking towards Harlem now, if you think about the difference between Harlem and Duotone, it almost couldn't be more stark. You know, Duotone's notably the biggest brand in kiteboarding with the largest turnover and, the biggest team and, massive roster of kites. And then Harlem, from my perspective, in the industry, started out as quite a small kind of Dutch brand. And then since they've been pairing with obviously Ralph at Brainchild, they seem to have, really grown. And then obviously they got the Casatis on board as team
Yeah.
riders. And then Aaron went across, and that was sort of really big news. But it feels to me like they're still, it feels like it's still quite a small brand, but with some big names and some big goals, but they're sort of maybe at the start of that journey. How do you feel about them moving across, and how do you feel about, making that switch to something a little bit, more like a smaller family rather than a bigger one?
Well, I think to start with, it is, I think you're right, it is smaller and they don't seem to be trying to get too ahead of themselves, but it's very people driven and people based. And that's something that I gravitated towards. I love working with people, and with such a big team with Baltimore and Duotone, it can be hard to work with everybody from generally being lots of people. But I never was that involved with too many people with Duotone. And like I said, I got on with my stuff and that suited me. But I think I got to a stage where I wanted to be more routine. I wanted to be on Teams calls. I want to know every single person that works for the brand. And so once I got to know them, I sort of just got sucked into it, if you like. And I guess the best observation you can have in your life is your close friends and how things affect them. So, like I said, Aaron is a close friend of mine and lives 2 roads away from the little village I live in here now. And just seeing him change over the couple of years that or the year and a half that he was with Harlem was unbelievable. Seeing the dedication that he had to being having his life more structured, and it's almost like he's become he's learned so much, and he's so involved there with product cycles and planning years ahead of what's happening. And obviously his relationship with Ralph was very strong. Too also had a good relationship with Ralph. So I think you end up wanting to work. You want to work with your friends in life, I think, when you can, and when opportunities arise like that, you look at them and think, oh wow, here's a chance. And I also felt that there was a role for me. I felt that with the brand being so successful and with my background in broadcasting, not only competing, of course, I can get on with the other athletes, but I went in with the angle that I could be a storyteller for the brand. And I'll go into a bit more about my roles coming up over this year, certainly. But I felt there was a place for me, like, and Aaron agreed. And then I started to get to know the brand, and one thing led to the next. Obviously, the opportunity to perhaps be involved with sales in the UK, which we'll talk about too, came up. But a number of things lined up. I mean, the brand itself, I have a big part of my career is spent working with wind energy and teaching kids about the power of the wind, which I'm sure we'll talk about. The brand's logo featuring throughout the products is a wind turbine. On my bar, I have wind turbines on my bar. I have wind turbines under my feet. I have I mean, that to me was, if ever there's a sign of, like destiny, because I believe in that a little bit. That was a big one. I was like, wow, this is unreal. This is meant to be. So lots of things lined up, but just touching on the people side of things, that is, there's some really clever and dedicated people behind the scenes, which excites me working with them.
And so you mentioned the bar there. Let's talk about the kit before we get into the kind of the bigger deal, I guess. You've been riding the Rebel, I think, quite a lot, the Rebel SLS
That's
and the
right.
Eco version. That was your sort of main kite with duotone. I
Yeah.
think the Evo as well, dabbled
Hmm.
on that. But what was it like when you first put that Harlem kite up in the sky? If you've been riding a brand,
Yeah.
I know from testing gear, right? When you're testing gear, sometimes you put a kite up and it feels right. Sometimes you put a kite up and it might take a few hours to get dialed into.
Yeah.
What was it like when you put that first kite in the sky, you launched it and you pulled on that bar for the first time and got going? What was that feeling like?
Oh, that was very special. And I tried to hold off that moment, thinking it would arrive in Cape Town, because I've had the gear sitting there a little bit, and I was all the way up to the end of um, December with Duotone. I wanted to honour that, and I didn't even think of using the gear till the 1st of January. And then I went somewhere freezing near Witcherings on like a 4 degrees day. Thought, there's no way I'm kiting here. A good friend of mine, Roland, took me to this secret spot, and I had a 6'5" wetsuit. Never worn one of them with a hood. That was brilliant. And it looked so good. I was like, I'm going to have a go here. So it really, it felt like, it just felt incredible. I mean, everyone talks about their new gear in a nice way, but I mean, the facts is that I rode and fitted in beautifully to the Concept Blue range, what I do with sustainability. But that range is the D Lab and I think it would be open about it. The D Lab is their top of the range
Yeah,
kite. So it was getting harder and harder for me, even though that range was a good range, to get near the locals that were boosting on D Labs or Harlems, especially. So I feel like I don't, yeah, I maybe felt a bit disadvantaged on those days, like now I feel like I've got the advantage. I've been out in Cape Town just now, and I was barely even trying, and I was getting some of my biggest jumps. What was lovely is I managed to get a nice big jump for our GKA Wood Challenge and contributed on that list. I think I got the biggest one of our Harlem riders. All right, we didn't get the conditions we would have liked to go into the 30s, but yeah, I feel like after 10 days out there, look, I'm 40 years old now. I sat here all December with no wind, we had Christmas, we had a bit of a party. You know how it goes in the UK. Gone out to
Yeah.
Cape Town, gone out to Cape Town to get some new content. And, I'm asked to film with filmmakers, photographers, and just go out and perform. And the older you get, you're like, can you go and do some freestyle, go and do a back mob, do a like, and I could do it all. Like I could do it all. And I felt definitely something I'll be passing on to my students when I'm coaching is that are you thinking of your gear maybe? Is it holding you back? Are you the best version you can be as a kiteboarder with your equipment? So I get on with the pads and straps incredibly well. Like the grip that I have now is something I've missed, to be honest, like that grip with a board. And just the feeling I felt like I felt I came back home like a better kiteboarder. And I hope that shows in my video that I can still do my moves. And it was, but isn't that what everyone wants in life? Just to be doing their passions to the best of their ability. So, yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about how the equipment feels. I mean, look, I've lined it up down there. I never did, I never do. Who does that? Like, I love the stuff so much. Like, I mean, I'm going to show you the bar. I have to show you the bar of the wind turbines here because this is such a powerful. It's such a powerful thing to. Can you? Oh, hold on.
Yeah, I can
Where's it?
see that.
All right. Yeah. Look. Can you see those wind? I mean, that for me, as someone that works in the wind industry as well, and when you start learning about the links with sustainability with the brand and how important that is to them, that's unbelievable that those two things have joined up. So no, I feel very good, very excited, and I can't wait to do more this year.
Yeah. So it's like love at first sight as soon as you started flying the kites then.
Yeah, I felt like, and both of them. I mean, I think that's important to say. I mean, we know that the peak is their super boosting thing, but I used to thrive quite a fair bit out there. I used to 10 thrive, and I'm really keen to show people where they fit in and which model to use. And there's more models to come, and yeah, I feel, the product, I had undyed kites, which is good for the environment. And with the way that kites are produced at Harlem, with the material, and we'll go into that, I'm sure, with the material that they order for all of their kites, which is the undyed material, not different colors, because all of their kites are printed in one color scheme. And that's very environmentally friendly. So because I've gone from, the white appearance undyed full kites, it's like I've gone to a world of black and white to color. The color in my life now, when I look at the bags and the kites, is just like, it's like I've been blind or something. It's like, it's really unbelievable. Like I look at my gear and I'm just like, this is like, it's like rainbows in the sky. Like it really feels good. And the best thing is it looks better in England with the bad weather. It actually looks even better. Like before I was sort of weren't even seen. Now my kite's like a bad day. You're not telling photographers, oh, don't bother. It's like, it's totally flipped it upside down. It's vibrant and wonderful.
It is good. Now, I mean, let's might as well get into the eco side of it now. I mean, anyone listening to the podcast will know I think I've done two with Ralph, who runs the Brainchild Factory. But what's the take on it from Harlem's perspective? What's their kind of push on eco, and why are they so focused on it?
I think it's been deep within the roots of the brand. I mean, originally and still now, there was they had a big program on all of them. Even the boxes that arrived to you are recycled boxes. One of the first things that I noticed, and that was something that they started doing early on within the brand. And also their kite, they had this thing, they wanted the kites to last a very long time. So, back in the early days of the brand, they still have kites around now. I don't know the names of the models, but they're all about making them bomb proof and not so that people aren't turning over kites every other year. But just on the actual subject of what makes them, I believe, one of the most, if not the most sustainable brands in the world right now, is because of the relationship they have with Brainchild, and because it's such a linear way of production. So they don't have to do one or two big orders throughout the whole year. The other brands mostly need to do that, and they need to kind of guess how many kites they're going to produce. And they also have to get many different colors of materials, which is tough. And they don't know which ones are going to sell. so well. So I mean, the biggest problem in our industry right now is huge discount at the end. It's having too much stock, and we know how damaging that can be to brands, and retailers have to sell things for so much cheaper. So Harlem have really gone in to evolve that, and they've looked at that and thought about all the ways that they can target that. And I think one of the biggest reasons that Harlem is so sustainable is that there is only one material that they need. And I don't even want to say color because it's the undyed material that they order in, which appears white. And then all of their models of kites can be made from that material, not multiple different colors. So that's a very sustainable way of producing the kites. They can make that material into any of the sizes or the models as well. So for me, that's one of the biggest reasons why they're so sustainable, and that is something I gravitated to as well. I mean, just the way that they're doing things as far as retail as well. That they don't want dealers to end up with hundreds and hundreds of kites, and because of that relationship with Brainchild, they can replenish their stock at the end of each month. Rather than these two big drops, they can say, right, you just hold the kite sizes that are important to you in your area. We don't want you to take massive risks. Just, you don't want to do that at shops. I know the shops quite well from my time in the UK, and to get on board with a new brand, they want you to put that massive big order in, but they don't want that risk to be passed to the dealers. So they want it to be about steady growth. And if you need another size, another kite at the end of the month, we can make it for you because we're flexible. So it's a very fair model. It's sustainable, and it's an attractive part of their sales model, which is something that I also looked at. And there was an opportunity to go into that with Aaron as well in the UK. So that was I wasn't expecting that. Like, I just thought it would just be another brand doing their kite thing, and maybe that I should do that because I've always thought about that. So lots of reasons, but generally the way they're evolving, the way the industry moves kiting equipment is something you can't help but notice.
Yeah. I mean, they've obviously got the kites being made at the Brainchild factory in the bags. Where are the bars manufactured and what's they do with that? And have they got any other sort of eco credentials that they're pushing throughout the business in Holland and elsewhere?
I can't tell you where the bars are made. I don't have that information.
I thought you were going to
Maybe
say, I
next
can't
time.
tell
So
you, I'll have to kill you.
yeah, yeah, that no, I don't. I don't know where the bars are made. But just, I mean, they don't want, very often we come together on video talks. They don't often want everybody to fly around the world and have these big dealer meetings. They're happy to do a lot of that online as well. And in general, in those types of ways, that even the way they're moving around, it's in their values not to be unnecessarily traveling around. But I mean, I have been brought in to tell a bit more of their story about their sustainability. I've mentioned there just the way they work with material, which is a very sustainable practice. They are now dedicating a lot of time to my schools program and working with young people, teaching them about the environment using kite surfing, which is something I've been doing before, but now it will be a bit more tailored for Harlem. So one of the things that I'm tasked with doing is telling that story and learning more myself. And so I will make a video this year all about why they're sustainable. But it's definitely the factory and having that sort of advantage of working with Ralph and not having all of those different colors to produce and producing things flexibly. I mean, you only have to look at they had an older kite called the Force, one of their first kites, I think, that got our attention. Right, you don't see 500 of them sitting in a container somewhere. They were made and sold and moved on, and there isn't just all these things. I mean, that is one form of sustainability, is that your materials are used efficiently and aren't just sitting there. Not only does that help retail, but it's great for people in general, knowing that their equipment is going to have a good resale value when they move it on, because there isn't 300-400 other ones on discount being sold. So that is something they're very dedicated towards, not overproducing and being in line with demand.
I mean, you mentioned the sales aspect there, which is something I'm keen to sort of hear a little bit more about because, being in the UK, and obviously people know I now live out in far western Wales, where I think I'm probably the only kite surfer on most beaches. When I go down, there's like, I think there's about 10 people in the WhatsApp group, and they all live in Tenby, and I never see them, so I never kite there. So I'm always somewhere different on my own. But when I did come down to the South Coast, for our demo weekends and stuff like that, you always kind of saw, the old classic kites out there, like the duotones, the cores, a few cabrinas, bit of North, some of the major brands, and didn't really see much Harlem. And I've always kind of felt like, having tested the products myself, I mean, I rode the peak, I think, in Morocco in 2024 at the end of the year, and was blown away by it. I was really impressed with how easy it is to fly. Probably kind of similar feelings to you. I hadn't ridden a twin tip in a while, and I was boosting
Yeah.
big jumps, and it was easy. And I was just like, I was even like starting
Felt
to do
good.
kite loops again. Yeah, I was like
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
kite loops and going, well, I've
yeah,
still got this. I even
yeah,
went out to
yeah.
the big white dune out there and jumped off the massive white dune, which I've never done
Wow.
anything like that before at
Blimey.
all. But I had
Yeah.
the confidence to kind of do it. So I know the kit's really good, but I just don't see much of it in the UK. So what's happening with the sales? Because you sort of told me a little bit about it in private before, and I was quite excited to hear about it. So what can you say to our
Okay.
listeners?
I can say that first and foremost, when were you last here? Because I think it's changed around certainly this way. So my
Yeah,
my beach now is very dominant with Harlem, and
really.
I think that is because of the effect that Aaron has had locally riding. Like, and he hasn't been with the brand a long time. So maybe when were you here? Probably a year, something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
I don't think I came
yeah.
last year, so it would have been
No.
2024 last time.
Yeah, so I think a lot has changed there, and definitely what I noticed, which I almost couldn't get my head round, is because I feel like with kiteboarding, like you said, you've got the market leader and you've got the other brands ticking along. It has been quite some time since a brand just gone like that, like, and just organically really boomed and started winning big events and kind of looked like they got all bases covered. And from what I see on my WhatsApp groups of my local riders, which is hilarious sometimes with all of the AI videos of a new Harlem rider, and they've made some of me, and every other person's on a plane with a big tray full of beers going on holiday with Harlem, Harlem, Harlem. It's like somehow the growth organic, the marketing or the subtle marketing has given people a reason to choose themselves without feeling sort of pushed into the brand. There hasn't been too much like the marketing hasn't been, you got to buy Harlem, it's the best. It's been very honest. And I think people have seen that. They can see that they've got Lorenzo dominating all the events. They can see the Woo leaderboards that people riding Harlems are riding quite, going big. It's quite factual. It's not forced down your throat. And I think because of that, that somehow they've got there's a movement and a culture here of people wanting, and I'll share some of those images with you later. It's like every day there's like a new person, like, welcome to the Harlem family. And it's not been that we haven't had a distributor or an agent in the UK doing that. So you kind of think, well, how has this happened? Like, they've got a cool thing going on in Ireland. I know they support the event out there, the Pure Magic event in Achill Island, and they've got good people everywhere. And then, I mean, let's talk about the distribution then. And first and foremost, that I will be
Yeah.
involved in the UK alongside Aaron, and we will be looking to expand the brand. And I think it's fair enough that you've noticed further up north and west, like, we need to now look at where we need to be. We've got a very strong presence here. We've got Carl Tidy at Unity, who's been doing amazing for the brand, has to be said, king of water sports. We want to expand that, and it's something I've always thought about doing. But it's tough to get into those roles, like, let's take Duotone, for example. It was within Emma's family for generations, it's fair to say,
Yeah,
and
40 odd
most
years.
most brands have some sort of family connection, and it's not easy. Even for me as a international rider with some background in the UK, there's not many brands you could choose from. So when that came up and I learned all about the ways that they're working and how that would be beneficial to me and how that would give me an advantage and not just be me going into a shop saying our kites are great, I sort of really thought about that, and me and Aaron had a chat, and it's something I'm really looking forward to, that, to because I like, nothing's better to me than demo days. I love demo days. Some people hate demo days within the industry. Like they're very open to me about that. They don't want to be around loads of people. I want to be around people trying gear and coaching them to be better on it. I want them to feel like you do when you just said you felt like you still got it and you almost surprised yourself. And I know and believe there's a relationship between your equipment and getting to those places. So the idea that I can now be part of very interactive demo days. I mean, I've tried to evolve demo days from not just go and try a kite to I'm going to do full group coaching. I might advertise it for a free hour, get people there, do it all with my BB talking speaker so I can talk to the whole beach. I've really tried to evolve demo days, but now the idea that that's actually going to, I'll be directly rewarded for that. It gives me a greater sense of adventure. Like, how can I really make these special, and how can I see more people? So I'm really excited about that. It's a new path for me, but it involves meeting more people, and I'll see how I go with that. It'll be exciting.
Are you and Aaron going to be running a distributorship, or are you going to be agents? Selling the stock and then the stock comes across. How's it looking on that front?
Yeah, so I mean, to be straight honest, we'll be agents to start with until we hit a certain number. We will stay as agents, and then the long term goal is to become distributors, where we'll get better margins, of course, because we'll be selling more. But we're going to start. I mean, we've had to really be cautious about a little bit, me and Aaron, is that we have a lot of roles in other areas. I mean, I'm commentating a lot of the time, any of the big air events. I'm coaching. I'm working in schools. We had to be really confident that we could give that the time, which is why we're doing it together. And we don't have either one of us just taking the 100% of it. So we will be on a journey this year to learn who's best at what and how we can work together with that. But it's just something that we had to be careful of. We couldn't just go because it does need time, right? Like I need to be available when the dealer wants to call me and talk about things, but because we got such good support from the brand itself, I mean, that's been wonderful, teaching us all about how it works and they're only a call away and all my Microsoft Teams that I'm a part of now, I can reach out and learn about that. I feel like I've got solid support and I know that one of the members is going to come over, visit some of the potential shops here and the ones we have in the UK. So I feel like I've got that backing to do something which is new to me, but I know the shops and I've been working with them and I've been coaching people there and I think I do know enough about that side of things that this will work hand in hand quite nicely, especially with Aaron. He's very technically knows everything about the equipment and between us I think we'll offer something a bit more to our dealers and potential dealers, like we'll be able to do more for their communities and hopefully help them move kites and equipment, which is what they want to do, and that's how they get paid.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting time, isn't it? I mean, it's probably good timing because obviously the industry's been in a bit of a tough place the last few years.
Yeah,
And perhaps if we were having this conversation 2 years ago, it might be a little bit more daunting, sort of launching into that space. But it feels
yeah.
like, we're coming out the other side of it. I mean, how do you feel that the industry's doing? I'd imagine you and Aaron have, not just looked at this as a sort of a fun project, but as a serious business. How do you feel
Yeah.
the industry's faring at the moment?
I always think a good reflection of how the industry's doing right now is how it looks looking out to sea in Cape Town. I mean, that might be not the perfect answer, but I always get a sense of being in Cape Town how many people are flying new kites, how many new kites you see. Are they all 7 or 8 years old out there? Because the whole of the Northern Hemisphere are out there, right? Or at least the ones that can work remotely, which is basically most people these days. Anyway, so you look out there and see, like, some years you're like, oh, there's not many people flying here or tourism's down or something, but it was absolutely thriving out there this season now that I've been out, obviously, to King of the Air before Christmas and after. I think that people understand now that there has been a jump in equipment, because every year is a lot sometimes to ask people that there's a new change. I mean, sometimes it's just new colors, that is a fact of the industry. It's another thing I like about Harlem is they're 2 year cycles. They don't make changes unless they're really impactful changes. So I think people realize that their equipment has moved on quite a lot from their even 3 year or 5 year old kites. And I also think people are starting to value that their passions are things they really want to do, and they must find time to do it and to dedicate to that. So just around me, and certainly, like I told you about Cape Town, but just certainly locally and on the groups, I see people buying kite surfing equipment. I see people planning kite surfing holidays again, which I plan to go on a kite surfing holiday with no obligations other than just me going kite surfing in Egypt with my local group in March. I got that idea of that going on holiday is like to go kiting. I think it's on the up. I think it's promising, and certainly the numbers that I'm looking at here with Harlem and what they believe we can do in the UK, and certainly what they're doing internationally. It's lovely getting these messages from the sales team saying we've achieved, we've gone over 300% of what we thought we would this time, and I feel like there is a very infectious positivity within the industry. And certainly, I can't speak for all brands, but certainly within the brand that I'm part of now, it feels like there's a lot of opportunity and things are going well.
How's it as a, obviously you've got the sales side and the telling the story, but I'd imagine you're a bit of a team rider as well. Are you, are they sort of planning photo shoots? You're going to be going away with the Casatis and Aaron and doing big air and hanging out with the crew, or how's that kind of fit in within your role?
Well, team rider, that was the shop rider was the first one, wasn't it? That was the first one you wanted to be back when you were
In
18
the
or
early
19.
days.
So, I mean, I think there will be a profile of me on the team rider page so I can achieve a team rider status for 20 years. But I think that, the most interesting thing to tell you is that when I first sort of started reaching out to Alex, who's the CEO at Harlem, he was very direct with me and was like, "It won't work as you as a team rider. We want you to be part of the brand. We want you to be part of the staff." And I was thinking, well, I've never really been anything other than a team rider. It was a bit scary in a way. And he said no, and he gave me all his reasons and how we would work better together, and that I would have my own Harlem Lewis, like my own email address with Harlem Kitesurfing. It was like I was like, wow, I started listening to it, and then I realized that I could, achieve my potential. That's what I want to do, is achieve my potential with them. So it's different in a way in that I am not just solely a team rider that goes out and competes anymore. That is clear. One, I haven't competed for a while. I'm not retired because you just never know. Like I don't want to hang my boots up, as Sophie Matthews once said. But I want, I want not yet. I want to be involved in all different areas of the brand. But I think it's important for me to still show that I can kite to a high level. And that is why I've just been out in Cape Town to get some good shots and videos and photos of me riding to a level that I think shows that the equipment shows the equipment off as well. But I mean, I probably won't be on a lot of the photo shoots. There's never been something I have done, to be honest, so much. I learned very early on that my values to a brand wasn't R&D and photo shoots. I just want to go off and do what I want. I'm not very disciplined. I mean, I will obviously help with a photo shoot, but people don't understand the level of riders that you need to work with photographers. And like someone like Aaron spends about an hour with a photographer and it's all done. Like I'll be there all day doing, oh, come back over here. What you doing? What lens you got? How far should I be? Some people are just so naturally gifted at that, and especially the R&D side of thing. I've got other values that I've learned, and those are the parts that have been written into my contract actually. And in some ways, you could say that they're my rider side of my contract. Obviously, there's the sales in the UK, but the rider side of my contract will focus on telling stories. Like I said, it will be producing podcasts for the brand, a coaching series. I'll produce some videos showcasing their wonderful custom kite, um, uh, showcasing their custom kite ability within the brand, which is very powerful to external businesses. Also, like I said, the sustainability video, I'll be making some very um, quick, raw cuts from when I'm at the competitions. I'm at all the competitions, mostly the big air, and those behind the scenes are really exciting. And proposed that I could do a small update for the team whilst I'm there. So as much as I might not be in all the photo shoots and video shoots, I still ride with the team. I spent a great time with the team just out there now, riding with Baptiste, Stino, you know, Lana was there. She finished on the podium at the Red Bull King of the Year. Aaron was riding all the time. Scott Barronson is a guy that really does a lot behind the scenes and a good rider. And it felt great to be part of that smaller team in a way and feel like, like I was part of something. I was on the WhatsApp group with them. We were doing loads. So I will be involved in all those things, but that's not the sole purpose of me joining the brand. I'd say there's get Lorenzo to do things like that, and Aaron maybe. Lorenzo and his brother may be best suited for that stuff.
You mentioned there that you're not retiring. What would it take to get you into a competition these days?
What would it take? Probably my own. It would take my own. What's the word? It would take my own dedication to put myself probably physically in a place where, I mean, I won't beat around the bush. The best chance I'd have at any competition is if it's 50 knots and it was off the scale. I've always enjoyed that strength of wind. I'm not going to suddenly go to a freestyle comp, although I think I'd do all right in a freestyle comp, but it would take some sort of storm, or it might take a moment in my life where I think it'd be nice to see how well I could do, just to experience that feeling again. I mean, I really like the way that the UK scene has gone, where we now are embracing big air. We spent way too long pushing freestyle, I think, in the UK at a time where that wasn't a stepping stone into the world of kiteboarding, because it's such a small niche thing. Although freestyle has come back a little bit, but big air, they're right. The kids want to do big air. And so now we have a number of big air stops. One obviously stopped in my hometown here of Littlehampton, which was really successful. Last year, we've got the event in Portland, Puckle, which is, that is trailblazing the path for big air riders. International riders are going there. So you look at this stuff and see the videos, you're like, maybe I could still deal with it. So it's about as far as I'll go with that. But, I would never like to permanently remove myself from maybe that urge I have to be like, do you know what? I'm getting out there. So, maybe when I'm 50, I'll compete. But for now, I'm quite happy on the sidelines. But you never let go of that. You never let go of looking at other riders and competition. I see it in Aaron all the time. He looks at events. He's like, I could have dealt with that. Should have been in this, like, it's so funny watching him have that. But yeah, I can't
Well,
tell you when, but yeah.
He was super competitive, right? But I know you were very competitive as well, because you had a long, storied career. I think you were British champion 3 times, weren't you?
Well,
And
4 times. I actually
4
include
times.
the.
Oh, 4
Oh
times.
yeah.
Wasn't the fourth time a gimme? Or am I disparaging you now?
No. But I'll give you. So I will use Mark Shin's double world champion as the example there. So he won
There we go.
2 tours in 1 year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Which
He was
was
the only
why he
person to
was
win
2 times. It was
2
at
times world champion.
KPWT and something like that.
KPWT and PKRA. Yeah, the only person
Yeah.
ever to
So
be the
and he.
undisputed world champion, because
So
no one else had won
oh
both.
wow. Okay. So he rightfully is a double world champion in my mind. So previous to my 3 British championships on the BKSA tour, I won Ron Smith's KBBT tour, kiteboards British tour. That's but maybe not the best way to lead into that. But father of Craig Smith is a good guy in kiteboarding. He ran that, but I generally did win a few. I actually had to compete hard for that. I had to win the event at Isle of Wight at the end, and I think I'd done well at Woolacombe. Pool 1 was a bit weird with no win, but that was a British tour running alongside the other British tour. So that is
That's
why
your 4th one.
that was my 4th one. And just to talk about that journey you talk about competitively, I got so fortunate because I loved big air. I got into the sport when I was 17, a bit older than most, but the sport was new and I was at that age. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't lazy. Loved doing big air, and then it quickly became all about freestyle. I had to sort of, calm my big air aspirations down and focus on freestyle like we all had to. And that was about 2004 and 5, and then all the way up to 2010, 11, 12. Big air wasn't a thing, and I eventually obviously jumped those piers and that was just more of a expression from me of wanting to do those things. And then the Lenten Mega Loop Challenge came back in Cape Town, which put Big Air back on the map a bit in 2012, which I won, which was amazing. And I wasn't far off 30 here. Then suddenly the Red Bull King of the Air came back, and it was like I got an extension of my career. You know, people, my best result at King of the Air came when I was about 34. That's quite crazy when you think about it. But I've always looked at it like this now. I've got a very clear understanding to me about what makes good riders and how do you do well in competition. And I definitely feel like I overachieved, which is a nice thing to feel. You probably don't want to sit there feeling like you underachieved. That'd probably be a hard thing to do. But what I've learned, especially being around riders like Aaron and Ruben, is that you know, if you're a bit lucky like me, the sport moved to what I was good at. I was always good at being in my boots and taking the biggest kite and looping my kite level. That was the thing. That's, but you know, the mid 2015, 16, 2018. I mean, 2018, I got on the podium just doing pretty simple straight loops, powerful ones, and that became in. So the sport moved to what I was good at, and you can be fortunate like that. And I appreciate it. Moved away now. I'm not the best at board off, so I won't deny that. And now the sport is very much focused at what's going on at the other end of the kite, you know, and the technicality. But the very best riders can move towards the in things. They naturally, like Aaron, can just be like, I can do that. I can do that. But the real champions of the world are the ones that actually are influencing the change. Like Aaron used to do in freestyle. He used to go off and think, what's no one doing? How can I innovate a new move? And then suddenly everyone's doing double handle pass or this. So they're very, very elite. I mean, the very good ones can move with the times. Ones like me get lucky if it comes towards them. But the very best ones, Kevin's, Jesse's, you know, Lorenzo, Andrea, all these top riders now are the ones that you see something new all the time. So I've had a really good understanding of that. And I feel like I'm at peace with that, because you do sometimes look back and you think about how you could have done better. But like with anything in life as humans, you've got to also look at what went well for you. And I think I'm so fortunate to have competed and had those years and achieved those things. And I feel like I overachieved, which is a nice feeling to have.
Do you feel like there's a changing of the guard a little bit? You mentioned there that you were 34 when you podiumed at King of the Air. It feels like now, you know, the top King of the Air or top, you know, top big air athletes are all very much a lot younger. Why do you think that is? And, you know, is that something you're comfortable with, or, you know, would you prefer it that the older guys were still able to mix with the younger ones?
No, I'm totally comfortable with it. And again, it's taken a lot of thought, maybe subconscious thought, you know, how's this happened? What's going on? And I think first and foremost, I believe the equipment became a lot more user friendly. You know, for young people to have got into the sport 10 years ago, it was hard getting into it at 8 or 9, which is when a lot of these top riders now got into it, because they've been kiting at least 5 years. I would say between 15 and 20 are the top riders now, but the equipment has become a lot more accessible. There wasn't so much depower on our kites, and we didn't mind that. It was what we were there to do. We were just solid muscle mega loops with bindings, and you know, you took an 8 and you were pathetic. You took an 8 and you were pathetic, and it actually, I feel the turning point for me, because I mean, it is. I have been vocal about how a double kite loop was on a lot of our minds before Hill brought that in. It's one thing to think about this stuff; it's very different to actually go and do it. And that's Hill, I think, doesn't get enough credit for sort of changing the game like that. It took all of the rules to be turned upside down to enable that change. So from having, I can't go to the beach now and take a 7 when I know I could take a 9. It's very difficult for me to get over that automated, like I have to be seen on the biggest kite I can. Whereas he'll manage to sort of think differently and be like, right, I'm going to take a 6 today, or whatever size it was, on a day where you could take a 9. And he opened up a whole new world of double loops, but also the equipment allowed that. The way a kite turns and the way the kite pivots round now, they were much bigger. It wasn't going to be possible to do it on those sea kites. So I've almost I've also got to a peaceful stage with it, because you can blame yourself. Think, how can I not see that? It's so obvious. Take a smaller kite, but I've got a real peace with it now for a number of reasons. I felt like the kites got a bit more easy to. We used to have to be so built, to be out there, and it's not. I mean, the real dedicated riders now are down the gym and quite built, but some of them aren't. Some of them are quite stringy and tall, and it's okay to do that. So a number of things have happened over this last decade of 10 years, which I feel have been a result, have helped things grow like that, and I'm completely comfortable with that. And I think the best way to describe it, why I'm at peace with it, I think the new generation looked at what was happening with sea kites, with boots, and just thought, that cannot go any further now. This is done now. They've tried to take out the biggest kites in the biggest winds and be all macho and proud and keep the kites level. And it couldn't go any further with that. And I take a real peace with that it wasn't like, if they'd have gone on and developed that in another world, I'd have been like, oh, well, we didn't see that coming. But it took a completely different direction to move the sport on. So I'm totally at peace with that.
Sounds like it's interesting hearing you say what you said there, because it just reminded me of your rapid rise in the early days. We're talking about people who've been kiting for 5 years and their podium at big air events because the sport and the equipment's made it so accessible. But I recall, it wasn't long after you got into the sport that you were winning events and getting on the podium and then British champion. If I recall, was it about
Yeah.
6 years from you like learning to kite to being British champion or something? Or have I got
Um,
that wrong? I've got sort of memory
yeah,
that it
it's
didn't take
half
you long.
half of that. Half of that. So 3 years, if you include the 2006, 7 and 8 with my British championships on the BKSA,
Yeah, so
2005,
2004, I remember
2005.
you sort of
Yeah, I think I
being
started in
pretty
2003. I got into it and started winding everyone up, or maybe late 2002. But I won the Kiteboard British Tour in 2005. So it was about 3 years. But what happened with that freestyle was only just starting to get
just starting,
popular.
wasn't it? It was a change. It was another
It was,
change in the
yeah,
sport, right? Like
a
you're saying
huge,
now, there's
yeah.
this change in the sport. And when you came in, it was that change
It
in the
was a
sport that
perfect
allowed.
timing. All the people
Yeah.
that were kiting were 35 to 40 that could afford the gear, and I was in a very interesting bubble of young people, which involved, obviously Aaron was a bit more internationally traveling and dedicated by then, but Sam Light came about, James Balding, his story is unbelievable. You talk about someone taking to it quickly. He went from like in the amateur division one year to like being at like triple S the year after, I felt like. But I had such good people in the UK. I can't tell you how inspiring that was to see Sam Light be world champion in my eyes in the Kite Park League. I mean, I don't know if it had official status, but he smashed that thing for years, so I could see him growing up. Obviously Tom Court, Hannah Whiteley, Joe Wilson was someone I looked up to a lot. We obviously have a new generation now of younger riders, but I was at that right time where things were changing. But what's really interesting now is that the riders now, the younger riders, don't have to go through this freestyle journey. We all had to prove yourself with freestyle because that was the number one thing. And it was almost like you had to dedicate years of freestyle and unhooking before you got into big air. They're just going straight into big air now. They make specific big air equipment, so it's almost you'll be able to bypass that. And they still can manage freestyle because that's interesting, seeing them handle pass and doing things. If they haven't had a route in, you can always tell riders that have had a deep freestyle background with what they can do in all conditions. But yeah, you're right to say that it almost repeats itself, but there has been a changing of the guard because that's just the way it goes. Whether or not some of the old guard can still handle it in certain conditions, I think they could. But I think that there is definitely, I think events like Red Bull King of the Air, it's harder for the old guard to still get back in there. They want to promote inclusion and young people and new opportunities. So I do know some of the old guard that would still feel they could compete in that. And it's almost impossible for them to get in because they've either been in before or they want to push younger riders. But there's been a change, and that's like you pointed out, can go in cycles.
Yeah, that's interesting. It was just when you were sort of talking about it, I was like, you know what? I seem to recall Lewis came out of
Yeah,
nowhere. Because I remember at the time, I was one of the the older guys who'd been on the, competing a little bit. And I was just blown away that you could get so good so quickly. I think I started in like 2000. So I was probably only 4 or 5 years into my journey anyway by then. But it sort of felt like you've been around the block, and then you've got these young upstarts coming in, and you're like, man, it just makes this sport must be so easy. Because in windsurfing, that doesn't happen, right? You don't get someone
Oh,
learn to
yeah,
windsurf and then two,
yeah,
3 years later they're winning, British championships and stuff. It doesn't happen. And even to this day, you look at like who's winning the British wave sailing championships in windsurfing. It's all a bunch of old dudes that have been
yeah.
doing it for years, right? So it's that kind of needing that experience, which is interesting. I remember you saying something about with the big air as well. Like I seem to recall you saying that the older guys had more of an advantage because you had more experience under your belt. Because
Yeah,
essentially, the more times you jump, the more times you're flying, the more airtime you're
yeah.
having, the more experience you're getting of that. Do you think it's the kit that's changed there that's made it more accessible, where people can jump on kites and be doing, there's guys in my local WhatsApp group doing double loops now, which is just
Mm.
mind blowing,
Yeah,
and they're not spending every day on the water. They're weekend
yeah.
warriors that are getting out every now and then, and their time on the water is pretty limited. So do you think that need for experience has been cancelled out by the equipment?
I think my analogy I've always used is that when it's windy, like it's seriously windy. I mean, these are the times we generally hurt ourselves, right? When we're a bit too overpowered and we get pulled out of shape. So I always felt that the best analogy was an airline pilot, that you wouldn't want your airline pilot to be 25 years old. If you were told there's a bit of a storm up ahead, you wanted your airline pilot to be in his 50s. You actually wanted him to be full of experiences. And I think I'm specifically talking gale force wind and above, which is the times where you call on those experiences, because they're the times where you learn to not pull the backhand. You hurt yourself when you're committed, especially at the start of your kite loop, mega loop journey. You're so excited, you pull the loop before you even left the water. You want it, and then over time you build up more of an awareness and a memory to last times you've done it. Like you said, the more times you've done it, you have that experience to go off. But it's without doubt a fact that when I look out in Cape Town now, as opposed to 10 years, everyone's doing massive mega loops and comfortable and doing rotations. And I think, blimey, the standard here is like, it's gone, like everyone's very good. You didn't see that 10 years ago. And I do believe that is very equipment related. The equipment is specifically designed. I mean, what do you always hear with classic marketing? Kite will catch you. The kite will catch you. I tell you, it won't catch you when you mess that up and pull a loop and hit a gust in 50 knots, but it might be a bit more forgiving if you didn't have the perfect technique and you were feeling like you're on your looping journey in 25 knots. And then, yeah, I think that the equipment has come on a long way and it turns a bit quicker and it's given people access to the world they see also on social media and YouTube, because we have to remember there's a lot more instructionals and videos for people to watch now. That might be another reason why people are self-learning away from the water. We know how good that is as people to learn watching videos. So a combination of those things as well has definitely helped. I think people take their health a bit more seriously, I'd like to think, these days, with the more science that we have around, and again, more available material. So maybe I think people look a bit fitter on the water, and so yeah, a number of reasons, but I think number one reason is the equipment has allowed people to develop a lot.
All right, that's interesting. It's funny how it changes and goes in cycles. When you think back to the equipment that we had, you could then make a
Mm,
case for the fact that you doing so well so quickly on some old slingshot fuels, or probably RRDs
yeah,
was your first brand. It's like it was even harder then to kind of progress, because the equipment. So it makes me laugh. So many people that I talk to, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've been kiting for years." I'm like, "Oh, how long have you been kiting?" Like 6, and you're like, "You've
yeah,
never used a
yeah,
sea kite. You don't know what it's
yeah,
like to go out in 30 knots with a 30-meter and try and pull a kite
yeah,
loop and knock yourself clean out and end
yeah.
up in the hospital." Like, which that's what it was. It's changed so much, but it's great for the sport because it just means more people can access it quicker, and the more you can get that buzz from the sport and get that kind of, real addictive moment from it in a safer manner, then that's only going to
Yeah.
be better for the growth of the sport.
I think those experiences were helpful, though. I think that they were things that, like, whenever we started kiteboarding, that equipment gave us skills and an understanding of the wind and respect for the wind that actually made me a better kiteboarder. I think I see it a lot in the way people launch kites. I could almost tell you how many years they've kited by how quickly they whip a kite up to 12 and push the bar out. And I think, blimey, you nearly jumped there. Like, it was taught to me in my DNA to bring that thing up so slowly to 12, and I ride around with my kite a foot off the water so that I can depower it. But often feel when someone approaches me and says, "Oh, I used to fly a Cabrina black tip and a 4-line conversion 2-line. We were so hardcore back then," and I don't have that. I think we had that equipment. I mean, everyone dealt with it. I mean, lots of people learned to kite surf. I don't think it was as hard as sometimes people make out, this journey we went on, and it makes us these special people that we kited in 2002 and 2003. Like, it gave us an extra skill set and maybe more of a precaution to the sport
I
that
think
that
that
was
I think the
good.
caution's a big thing. Like I definitely, learnt the hard way a few times, and you have a few kite pairs on those old sea
Mhm.
kites, and they weren't
Yeah.
a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, it's the same. You see people launching, and you're like running over to them and like, do you need a hand? Like, they really wouldn't want to be launching a kite like that. And it just sort of seems a bit blasé. And I guess it probably comes down to that marketing thing that, the kite will catch you is the big buzzword now. But do you remember when it was 100% depower? It was like, that was the buzzword. It was like,
Yeah.
this
Oh,
kite
wow.
has 100% depower. It's
Yeah.
totally safe. You can't possibly hurt yourself
Forgot
with it.
about
And it's
that
like,
one.
well, yeah, it's not really though, is it? But it just kind of, maybe it inspires a bit of
100%
ill thought
decal.
out confidence that people
Yeah.
shouldn't have in it. Let's get back to young people for a moment, because something I definitely want to speak to you about whilst I've got you on is all the work that you do with young kids and schools. And I'm just going to talk for a little moment, so don't blush too much. But for anyone that doesn't know, I've been working with Lewis for the magazines for a long, long time, and I always remember him coming on a trip. I think it was in 2006 to Egypt, and he was probably not the most professional of riders, wanted to play Guitar Hero with Aaron all the time, and that trip was just an unmitigated nightmare anyway. But I sort of went away from it thinking, I don't know if I'd want to work with Lewis much anymore. It wasn't really that great. And then I think we had a conversation about it once, and I sort of said to you about it. And what was really interesting was you went away and you came back like a different rider, and all of a sudden you were sending these emails. I still get them now, monthly newsletter from Lewis, and I love it because it sees what you're up to and it tells what the brands are up to. And I don't know of any other rider that's ever really taken that on. And I've done media talks before with young kids with the Cabrina riders, and always use you as a bit of a sort of a beacon of what you should do, is not thinking about what the brand can do for me, but what I can do for the brand and what I can do for the sport, and how I can make an impact on people's lives. And obviously what you do with the schools is a massive part of that. So how did that working with the schools first come about?
So working with the schools, I was invited back to my old high school to talk to the students, and that was around 2000. Interestingly, about the time you said just then you didn't want to work with me again, which about that time. So I got an opportunity came up to do something a bit different, which I first was like, "Well, I don't want to go back to school and talk." And I went in because I loved school. I
Too
loved
busy playing
school.
Guitar Hero.
Yeah, well, luckily I hadn't burned my bridges at school, at high school. I went to a wonderful school in Worthing, which were very sport driven, and I look back at, I absolutely loved school. Like, some people don't talk about it like that, but it enabled me to be the sportsman I am today. I would never have been the sportsman without that teacher, Mr. Chapman, that taught me so well, and in fact gave me so many coaching practices I use today. But anyway, I went there, talked to the kids. I wasn't afraid of talking. I realised that I'd grabbed the microphone a bunch of times on the British tour because no one was doing it, and realised that I love talking. I always loved pretending to commentate my FIFA games on the PlayStation with a friend. We actually did properly record our commentating on there, good friend of mine, Martin Lloyd. But so I wasn't afraid. I liked it, and I quickly realised that there was a very strong message that I've always seen kiteboarding as a vehicle, as a tool that you can use to engage young people, and so many different messages. Schools are always doing topics on either the beach, the weather, looking after the environment, staying healthy, what to do after school, trying something new. It's very easy to bring in some big, colourful kites and make a really colourful, interactive presentation on whatever it is they're doing. And they have cycles of kids. I mean, it's not even horrendous if you go back and use the same one because they're new kids, you know, like you don't have to change so much. So you can keep going. It's not much of your time. It was only ever an hour and a half visit. And I felt that I think I was maybe after our chat and a few other people, Joe Wilson again was someone else that was kind of like forced me to think differently. I was trying to see what I could do differently. I've always felt that in some ways I've been a bit rebellious to the normal way of doing things. I didn't buy into sending everything into magazines. I never was this. I looked to that and could understand that with magazines that there would be riders that would hammer magazines with a full blog, free story, pictures. I used to love seeing magazine editors be around the world. I don't barely see any of them. I obviously see you, Rue, but I don't see many of them at the events anymore. I think they should be going around and finding out what's going on. So I kind of felt like I worked out that scene, which was a bit different back then. It's changed a bit now, but I thought, well, am I going to spend my whole time sending loads and loads of stuff in just to them to beg for a picture in a magazine? I thought, what can I do a bit differently? And so I thought, I'm going to start a newsletter. I mean, a newsletter is quite an old fashioned way of doing things, but I think what you have found is it's quite personal to sit there and read someone's newsletter. So I started religiously a monthly newsletter, and that was a lot. I've just changed it to quarterly. I had two kids now, so I had to change it to quarterly. But it gave me this. I think my first sponsor, RRD, a guy called Wouter Arden, local to me here in the distributor in the UK, he always said to me, "There's so many riders I only hear from when they want new gear," you know, and he sort of drilled that into me. Don't be one of those riders that you just only go to your brand when you want something. So I started this newsletter and I felt like that was the first real weapon I had of sponsors trusting I was doing things. And then fast forward to now I'm 40. That is why I feel I've been left to my own means to just get on with things because I'm updating them. I'm not an everyday social media guy. I don't do posts every day on social media. I appreciate and respect the importance of social media as a team rider, but my other values I think overpower some of maybe the normal ways of doing things. And definitely my newsletter and my work within young people gives a different angle. It helps a totally different industry in some ways. And it just gives me, you've got to diversify. I mean, when you're competing, you're one of 24 riders sometimes, maybe less nowadays, all trying to get on that podium. And I thought to myself, blimey, that's not easy to keep doing that. The Aaron Hadlows of the world can keep on getting to the top there. So I thought about all the other things I could do as a rider. And then I even had the genius idea to think, well, if I was presenting the prize giving, I'm on the podium every time. Like, so I started pushing a bit more. I was actually right in saying I've podiumed 6 times this year and I'd be standing there with my brand. But it got me thinking a bit more out of the box about what it actually means. What does value and exposure actually mean, you know? Like I really thought about those things and I found I found what I was good at. And that's what I encourage young people to do is to actually think, what makes you different than another rider? Tell me all those things. And I don't want to hear because you've got 5,000 followers more on your social media. I personally don't like that approach to young people that it's got to be about social media and do this and that. Do it and do it professionally, but it's all the other things. Can you speak? Can you do a presentation in front of 10 people and tell them about what you've been up to? Can you start a newsletter? Can you make a website showcasing what you're about? I like to push those things rather than just social media.
Yeah, I think that's good because, you know, we learned pretty early on. We were really early into the social media thing, and we were like, "Wow, it's amazing! We're getting all these followers and all these likes and all this
Hmm.
content. It's driving all this traffic." And then we were like, well, hang on a minute, you're at the mercy of the Mark Zuckerbergs and the
Mm,
people at the top who can very quickly decide that they don't want your content to be shown
yeah.
anymore to anyone, and they can change the algorithm. So we started, getting email addresses probably around the same time as you and really pushing for this newsletter database that we've got. And so now we have a bit more control over it. So we sort of feel like, yeah, we're at the mercy of the social media algorithm. Everyone
Hmm.
always is. But at the same time, you've got your own ownership of your own network of people that we
Yeah.
can email and know that they really like the emails they're getting and they're opening them up at a good rate. And so it makes a big difference. But yeah, I think it's impressive, what you've done. And what you do a lot of work with the Global Wind Energy Council as well. And so
Yeah.
you
No.
sort of marry that into the talks at school, or is that something that's separate?
No, I do. And I'll just wrap up. We've got one more comment on what we were just talking about. Is that I think a great thing to ask an aspiring rider or any rider is, what would you do if I deleted your social media? What's left? It's a good way to think, right? Like, well, oh, okay, what am I doing? So that's one thing I'm very thoughtful of, like yourself, thinking because it did all start great for everyone. But I like that question. But just back
That's a
to,
good one. No, I
it
like
is a
that.
good one, isn't it? I mean, because that has
I
actually
think the
happened to
industry,
some people.
the
Yeah.
whole well, that has happened, and that, what, the whole industry could do well from learning a bit of that, because these days it's like, oh no, you've got, they've got more followers on social media, so that's where we're going to put all our budget, and it's just like, yeah, but it's that, if that gets deleted, then what's it
It's
worth?
shocking.
Nothing.
It's shocking, and it's undeniably it's something that I have been compared to other riders with other brands and monthly reports and where you stand, and I can't stand it. I don't think it's right to do that. Like you can't. How can you compete with someone that's like Aaron's got load of following or Ruben and you're new and what that must make you feel mentally? I think there's a lot that needs to be learned and spoken about behind the mental health and well-being of social media. And I think that only encouraging young riders to be using those platforms as their way into the kiteboarding world and success is not right. And I'd like
Yeah,
to
I mean,
work a bit
they've got
more
no
about that.
control over it, right? They don't control who sees their post. They can, one guy can put a post up of a double loop and another guy can put a post up of a double loop, and it's not who's doing the best double loop or how stylish it is or how high it is. It's just what the algorithm suddenly goes, oh, that one's getting a few more likes than that one. I'm going
Yeah.
to push that one really hard, and suddenly they've got 100,000 likes on it, and the other guy's only got 5, and it's the same talent, same skill. So yeah, I agree. I think it's something that the industry probably needs to have a really good, long,
Must
hard
be
look at
hard
for
for a
that.
young people in general having to manage all of that. I mean, I'm so grateful. I'm showing my age now. I pretty much feel like I had half my life without social media and those things I learned about reading books and not just relying on tech. And I'm so fortunate I can recall some of those things and use them still now. And I think, oh, I've been using the phone too much or computer. Let's get a book out. But let's go into the wind energy
Yeah,
side of things
the
then.
GWEC and the wind energy side.
Yeah, so I've always had a few near sponsorships and projects within wind energy because like I said, I went to school and suddenly I was traveling the world and was like, wow, there's wind turbines everywhere. There's got to be something that we can do here. It seemed the most obvious thing to me in the world to pair. I mean, even some of the early British tour events were sponsored by Vestas or Centrica, which are wind energy companies. I noticed that, and so when I went, I further developed my talks in schools, which were all off my own back, just contacting schools. I never charged. I felt like my sponsors were sponsoring me to do those things. So I never email a school and like, this is how much I cost. It's my own time and I do that. So I started to structure my talks a bit more around the environment and I mean, it's very clear how wind energy, how much power there is in the wind when you show how high you can jump with a kite. Even better, my real magic tool was that when I had time to fly kites on the fields, I could pass the power of the wind directly into a child's hands. That was a very powerful message to approach the wind energy industry with, to say, they can go into schools and do assemblies and perhaps suits it. It is a industry which is a bit more corporate in some ways, and I could bring the fun to it. So I had that idea. I went to a few conferences, had some sort of small sponsorships. I had one with the first offshore wind farm built on the south coast, which was the best thing ever that happened to me. That is the Rampion wind farm, which was built in my hometown. I mean, going back to Destiny again, this thing was built right opposite, the centre is right opposite my parents' house in East Worthing, and it all lines up Central Row where they all spin like crazy. And I became an advocate for that, and was had a project with them in the early years of that starting, which even the British tour was part of, where people could get free kite flying. And I went on from there. And actually, during COVID, I was approached by Global Wind Energy Council, who are the voice of wind energy, and they could see my youth outreach program. And it was just like a dream come true. I went for a walk at Shore and Port underneath the two wind turbines there. The CEO that had started, a CEO that was actually from Brighton. They're an international um, organization, but he said, I've seen what you've done. I want to make things more fun with the brand. I'd like you to come on board as our ambassador. We'd like to pay you properly. We'd like to expand your schools talk. And I just couldn't believe my luck. I was like, this is what I've been dreaming of. So fast forward 6 years with them now. I've been to climate change meetings. I've been to meet UK ambassadors for other countries that kite, and I get to kite with them. And I've been tasked with these very like James Bond style um, documents, which are like, right, you need to be seen in this country, meet this minister, go to a wind farm that's just opened. I have a hard hat. I get tours of wind farm, almost surreal things to be tasked with. And I think, how am I here with my kiteboard and this brand? It's opened up a whole new world. I go to wind energy conferences and sometimes speak about the science behind how children learn, because I've learned a lot of that with kite surfing. And as I've always said, if you're talking about anything, it really helps to know what you're talking about. And because I know kiteboarding, I feel confident when I stand and talk there and relate it to kiteboarding. It's a subject that I know and I'm okay with it. So that has opened up many doors, and it's a wonderful partnership. And it's just such a great synergy now that, especially now I've moved to Harlem and we really want to showcase the sustainability values of the brand. Will show how the custom kite process can work using GWEC as an example. We will produce custom GWEC kites this year. The climate change meeting is in Turkey, COP31, which is great 'cause I've been there. It's a windy country. I can visit there. So it just gives me a different thing to focus on in a whole different world. And I do like working with young people. I love going to school. Went to school yesterday and just had the most wonderful time. They're so free spirited and free minded. I recommend anybody try and get yourself into a school just to hear the sounds of young children making noises. It's so good for your mental health and well being. It's a very positive place to be.
Do you feel like a lot of these opportunities have come out of you putting in a bit of hard work in the first instance? Like, it feels like, with the schools, you took it on your own thing to do it off your own
Mm.
bat. You weren't looking for payment, you weren't looking for money. With the wind energy stuff, you were out there, advocating for it, speaking to people, going to conferences, sort of making it happen yourself. Do you think that's a kind of a testament to where it's got you now?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely sort of having the belief and vision. And there were loads of times where I just thought, well, this is hard work. What I've gone too far here. I've driven 2 hours to do a school assembly, spent my own petrol money, and thought, maybe not had the best talks. The kids all going nuts, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? But then it all added up to. I've always learned something from it, and you have to be in it to win it. I think in many ways of life, you go out on that session where you're not up for it, but it's a bit rainy, and you come home and it kills you, doesn't it? You think everyone's messaging the group saying it was the best session of the year. Every kiteboarder knows how that feels when you think, but my instinct was to go, but I was tired. Like, you almost can't forgive yourself. Like, you've got to be in it to win it. So I had to be doing those things if I was ever going to attract a proper spot. It's a proper sponsor in kiteboarding. And I like to tell young people this as well. Even anybody, it's a proper job if you want it to be. I have a house with a mortgage. Not some of the top kiteboarders don't even have a mortgage, but I have this is my life, and I've got people that will pay me monthly that trust what I'm doing is giving a good message out there. But you have to go out and try and make that happen, and not get too upset when it doesn't happen. I mean, I used to send 10 emails a week to people and get barely one reply about sponsoring me. The amount of people I've tried to get sponsored by, you wouldn't believe it. I tried to get sponsored by Bosch, like the power tools company, because at the time, freestyle was really respected for landing super hard, where we would call it a Bosch landing. I got a reply from them saying, sorry, we can't put Bosch all over your kites and boards. But even the fact I got a reply from Bosch, I was like, wow, I got a reply from Bosch. You know, you name it, I've tried to get sponsored by it. But there is definitely an element of putting out there to get something back. You know, you've got to put something out there to get something back.
It's interesting. I think it's a nice note to finish on because we've been chatting for an hour and 20 minutes. But to see your journey through the kiteboarding industry, I mean, the first time I met you, anyone that's listened to a previous podcast will know this. You didn't even have a kiteboard, right? I think you came up to Whitstable and you were just body dragging
Body
around with a kite
dragging.
because you couldn't
Yeah.
afford a board. You and your mate had got
Yeah.
together and bought a kite. You couldn't afford a board, but instead of letting
That's
that
it.
stop you, you just went out and would body drag around for the whole session.
Hey
And I was
guys,
like, who's
just
this
me.
guy that's just like, yeah, just cruising up and down.
Don't
But
worry, I
it
haven't
just,
lost my board.
it's,
Don't worry. I
I
just
haven't
don't
got a
have one.
board. Yeah. If you lose yours, I might steal it for a bit.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a testament to that, you know, really being passionate about wanting to make something out of almost nothing really. And, you know, to see where you've gone, you know, I know we spoke about it at length at the time, you know, the reasons you jumped over the pier, and it was because you kind of felt like, you know, it was a career was coming to an end perhaps, and you had to do something
Mm,
big to kind of keep your sponsors, and, you know, you essentially risked your life to do that. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's not the best move, but, you know, fair play,
mm.
you did it. And then now with the wind energy stuff, you know, I think it's amazing what you've managed to achieve and the stuff that you still do with the kids. And please keep sending out the emails because I love getting them.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to hear that because you don't know who's getting them after this many years. Every now and again, someone replies, and you're like, "Wow, okay." Oh, thank you, Ruth. It's been nice to talk about it a bit, and it's equally nice to do things a bit safer than those things I done back then. But I tell you what, flying a kite in a school field when it's 35 knots, then that's half challenging. I'd rather go jump a pier sometimes. I had to take a six. I had to take a six out in Cape Town a week or so ago, a six thrive on a school field. And I was seriously like, this is going to be a challenge because they don't know what the dangers are if you kite on a school field. You have to be really professional about that. But I like that challenge too.
Yeah, well, at least it's dry grass in Cape Town and not
Yeah.
wet grass in
Yeah.
England because that'd be death on a stick. But
No.
Lewis, I've really enjoyed that. It's great to catch up. I'm really wishing you all the best with Harlem, and I hope you and Aaron make a great success of it. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you at demo events soon.
Thank you very much. That was great fun. See you soon.
And there we have it. That was a great episode with Lewis. I really enjoyed that. It's always a pleasure to catch up with him. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a like, share, subscribe, thumbs up, share it on your social media, whatever you need to do. Help us get this episode out there. We'd really appreciate that. And of course, I'm going to give a little shout out to our Diamond supporters, Core, Cabrina, Ozone, and Duotone. I really hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back with more soon.